Okay. Today's lecture is called To the Moon. NASA is launching Artemis 1, which is the most powerful rocket ever built. It's called Artemis 1, Artemis. So there's been months of delay, but finally, the most powerful space rocket ever built just blasted off from its Florida launch pad, embarking on the first of two test journeys preceding a mission that will return humans to the moon for the first time since 1972. The Artemis 1 rocket cost $20 billion. It is made up of the six-person Orion capsule perched atop a 30-story Space Launch System mega moon rocket. It fired 8.8 million pounds of thrust to lift off at 1:47 Eastern Standard Time on November 16th earlier this month. It's on a 30-day, 1.3 million mile maiden voyage to the moon and back. This flight is the first of three missions that will be a vital test bed for the hardware, software, and ground systems that one day will establish a base on the moon and transport the first humans to the Mars planet. This first test flight, which is part of the Artemis program — Artemis is a twin sister of the ancient Greek god Apollo — this program will be followed by Artemis 2 and Artemis 3 in 2024 and 2025-26. Artemis 2 will make the same journey as Artemis 1, but this time with a 4-person human crew. And Artemis 3 will send the first woman and the first person of color to land on the moon's surface at the South Pole. A NASA person wrote on Twitter, "We are going. For the first time, the NASA rocket and NASA Orion fly together. Artemis 1 brings a new chapter in human lunar exploration." 2 minutes and 12 seconds after liftoff, Artemis 1's two side-mounted rocket boosters separated to splash down in the Atlantic Ocean. Then 6 minutes later, their core engines shut off and the rocket's two stages split, leaving Orion and the SLS upper stage to make a short orbit of Earth, which followed with a 22-second engine burn to move the rocket further from our planet. Finally, the upper stage's first burn was followed by an even longer 18-minute translunar interjection burn that ramped up Orion's speed from 17,500 miles an hour to 22,600 miles an hour, launching the capsule away from Earth's gravity and sending it on its journey towards the moon. This was NASA's fourth attempt to launch the rocket. The first two attempts were scrubbed because of technical problems, including a hydrogen leak and a suspected faulty temperature sensor inside one of the rocket's core stage engines. The third launch was canceled when Hurricane Ian slammed into Florida in September, forcing them to move the rocket back to safety of its hangar. This week's launch was delayed by 2 days due to 100-mile-an-hour gales from Hurricane Nicole. The rocket remained on the launch pad during the storm and escaped with only minor damage. This morning's launch also had some technical problems. A hydrogen fuel line leak and a faulty internet connection that knocked out a radar system left engineers scrambling to fix the problems before the closing of the 2-hour launch window, leading to a 40-minute delay before the engines were ignited. Thankfully, both problems were minor and fixed. Orion will make 2 flybys of the moon at an altitude of 62 miles above the lunar surface, zipping as far out as 40,000 miles beyond the moon before returning to Earth. Now, stored aboard Orion are 3 mannequins that NASA will use to test for radiation and heat levels during the flight. There's also a Snoopy soft plush toy that's along for the ride, floating about the capsule as a zero gravity indicator. When Orion comes back, it will return hotter and faster than any space vehicle ever has, heating up to 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit as it enters the Earth's atmosphere at 32 times the speed of sound. This will put the capsule's ablative heat shield to the test, which alongside the craft's parachute will use air friction to slow Orion down to just 20 miles an hour, after which it should plop down safely and ready for retrieval in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of Baja California, Mexico. NASA is conducting additional experiments alongside the main mission. The SLS's discarded upper stage is carrying 10 CubeSats, that's like a little miniature satellite, which will deploy just a few hours after launch. Of these 10, 4 are dedicated to studying the moon, including one that will search for water ice on the lunar surface. 3 will study space weather and the effects of radiation on yeast DNA. 2 will perform tests of deep space communication technology and plasma thrusters. And 1 will unfurl a small solar sail in an attempt to fly by a small near-Earth asteroid. NASA is banking on a successful mission for Artemis 1, which has come under scrutiny for a price tag that has ballooned to eye-watering levels. Thus far, it has cost more than $40 billion to develop. This program is projected to knock U.S. taxpayers back by $93 billion by the end of 2025. Here's a quote from Paul Martin at NASA. Given our estimate of $4 billion per launch for at least the 4 missions, NASA must accelerate its efforts to identify ways to make Artemis-related programs more affordable. End quote. Otherwise, relying on such an expensive single-use heavy-lift rocket system will inhibit, if not derail, NASA's ability to sustain long-term human exploration goals of the Moon and Mars. However, despite the expense, NASA insists this program is worth it, saying that the Artemis project not only drives technical innovation, but it's going to be a crucial next step in the story of human exploration. Here's a quote from Bill Nelson at NASA. He says, "This time, we're not just going to touch down on the moon and then leave after a few hours or a few days. We're going back to learn, to live, to work, to explore, to determine, is there water? Therefore, on the moon's south pole, that would mean we have rocket fuel. We have a gas station set up there. This time, we're going to learn how to live in that hostile environment for long periods of time, all with the purpose that we are going to go to Mars."